So this is my first ever custom Tombstone build, and I am extremely proud of it. So I wanted to show the process of how I made it from beginning to end. As most of you know, I'm a huge film nerd, and obviously my favorite genre is horror, so I thought it'd be cool to give all of my custom stones a horror movie theme. So for my first one, I decided to make it for the character Count Orlok, or as he's better known, Nosferatu. So I started off with a sort of, but not really, scale drawing of what I wanted. I knew how tall and how wide it would be, but as far as the details, I figured that I would just figure that out as I went along. I tended to do better work that way, as opposed to just planning out every single detail. So obviously, the first step was to transfer the pattern onto the foam board. Unfortunately, living in South Carolina, in a very hot temperature zone, the foam board insulation that most people use is pretty hard to come by. So I was stuck using plain expanded polystyrene, which of course is typically extremely fragile, but I figured that a few coats of Drylock later on would help to give it some strength. For most of the pattern, I used a straight edge to outline, but as you can see, for these parts, I had to kind of eyeball it. They didn't come out 100% exact, but I was okay with that. Too much symmetry, I feel, would make it look fake, and I think it's the imperfections that really give it character. Next, it was time to cut it out. I used my Hot Wire Foam Factory kit, which is probably the best thing I could have ever bought. I'm not being paid to say that, but seriously, if you don't have a set of these tools, you need to change that fast. They make life so much easier. So it looks like I accidentally blocked the camera a little bit here, but basically I just used the hot knife to cut out the basic outline of the stone. I followed all the way around, and then it was just a matter of popping it out, and then doing the same for the inside. And I actually really liked the way that the hot knife made the sides look. I thought it sort of resembled chiseled stone a little bit. For the inside of the stone and the little window that I cut out, I wanted to place a candle sitting on top of a little perch, if you will. So I used some scrap foam that I had just cut off the edge and cut out two little slabs to sit one on top of the other, which would hold the candle later on. It's like how they say to use every part of the buffalo instead of wasting foam, or however that saying goes. So now it was time to start working on the details. I wanted to have an accent line, or I don't really know what to call it, but it was a line going all the way around about an inch from the edge, just something to make it not so flat. Again, I had to freehand part of it, and at the top I made a little half circle to carve a small symbol into. Again, just so that it wasn't a plain flat stone. And I used the engraver tool to follow the line, which I think is my absolute favorite tool in the hot wire kit. And yet again, it was not a perfect carving, but that's totally okay with me. I think it turned out pretty great. And here I am admiring my work so far. I think this is where I called it a night, but thanks to the magic of editing, you don't have to wait like I did. So I mentioned how I wanted to carve a small design at the top of the stone. Well, I decided to go with the vampire ankh. I think that's how you say it. It's sort of a variation of the Egyptian symbol, which means eternal life. And I thought it was appropriate in this situation. So I used the same method as I did for my hazmat suits, and cut out the symbol using an X-Acto knife to make a stencil. And then I traced it into place. For the Count Orlok lettering, I decided to use a different method since it had a lot more detail. I used the X-Acto knife to trace the pattern directly onto the foam board. Then I used Sharpie to outline it so I could see it better. And you'll probably see that I messed up the C pretty badly. That C is actually my least favorite part of this entire tombstone. And finally, I used the engraver to carve in the letters. This was probably the most tedious part of the entire process. But check it out. That looks pretty awesome. All except for that C, but you can still tell what it is. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail with this process. It's something that I picked up from Tara over at Halloween Forum, and I'm sure it's used by most people. Using PVC pipes to make channels for rebar to anchor it to the ground. Pretty basic stuff, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out her videos. She's pretty much the custom tombstone master. And yes, that is a computer weighing down the foam. Alright, so at this point, it was just a matter of adding in the final touches. I glued in the little slabs into the window cutout for the candle. Then last but not least, I carved in some cracks to make it look old. And these cracks, I love these cracks. These are actually my favorite part of the entire tombstone. And then, I had a stroke of genius. I still needed something to act as the candle, but I didn't have the right size PVC pipe. But it occurred to me that I had just used up a tube of caulk that was the perfect size. So, I cut the top off and fit it in place. Use every part of the buffalo. And now, with all the details finished, it was just a matter of painting. I did a base coat of white Drylock to help make it sturdy and provide extra protection against the weather. Then after a second coat of Drylock, I let paint drip down the candlestick to give the appearance of melted wax, and I think it captured that look perfectly. For the third coat, I mixed the white Drylock with dark gray latex paint. I went over the entire stone 2 more times for a grand total of 4 coats. And there should be absolutely no way for any moisture to get inside of this thing. Next, I used some black acrylic paint to paint the carvings. You can see the carvings fine when everything was gray, but by painting them black, it makes them seem deeper and more noticeable. I filled in the cracks too to make them stand out. And here it is, almost fully painted. I just wanted to make it a little bit less flat, so I did some quick dry brushing with a lighter gray. And finally, the very last piece to complete the entire stone, an LED tea light. And there you have it, my first ever custom tombstone build from beginning to end. There are a few things I wish I had done differently, but I am extremely satisfied with the final product. I can't wait to see it out in the graveyard this year. Anyway, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think of it down in the comments. This project was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all your thoughts. Thanks again, and I will see you guys in the next one.